Here are reports of encounters that don't fit any normal explanation. Tonight we'll hear accounts of Dogman, skinwalkers, crawlers, and large black animals lurking in places they have no right to be. These are cryptid encounters that'll make you stop doomscrolling. "6 years ago, I was a deputy for a rural county in the Dakotas. I don't want to give too much away because I don't want this traced back to me. The county was spread out and sparsely populated. Usually the most excitement we had was a biker gang passing through for a summer rally. Other than that, it was quiet most of the year. Early one winter, we started getting calls of prowlers on people's farms. When we went out to check, there was nothing there. The ones calling them in would say they saw someone walking around the property, usually in the evening. Since it was getting dark, they never got a good look. One of the callers, an older man in his 60s, said he saw the intruder clearly. I stood there with a pen and paper taking notes. But once he started saying the person was 8 feet tall and covered in hair, I slowly stopped writing. The guy giving the report I knew pretty well. He used to have a history of drinking, but was supposedly sober for the last few years. Doubt crept in that he'd stayed off the bottle. Still, I checked around. There were no signs that someone had been there, but there were prints of some sort in the snow. I assumed they were wolf prints by the look of them. There wasn't a large wolf population in the area, but packs passing through aren't unheard of. Figuring the guy was on the sauce again, and he saw some wolves walking by, I wrote it off at the time. This went on for a couple of months. Calls would come in every so often, and a few people mentioned seeing what they thought was a large wolf. That just confirmed what I already believed. Then, one night in March, I was returning from a domestic disturbance call. It wasn't anything major, when I saw someone run from the back of a house, across the street about 100 feet ahead of me, jump over a fence and go into another backyard. With how fast this person was running, it seemed suspicious. I radioed in that I was going to check things out. When I pulled into the driveway of the house the suspect had run to, I noticed the lights were off. There were no cars in the driveway either. Still, I went up to knock on the door to let the homeowner know that someone was on their property. I got no response. Then I went around to the fence and found the gate. The snow was pretty much melted, but since it was night and temperatures were dropping, everything was all muck. My shoes were either crunching ice or making that slurping sound mud makes. It was impossible to be quiet. I called out to announce myself, then turned on my flashlight. Scanning the area, I didn't see anything out of place. After a minute of looking around from the gate, I figured whoever had been back there had gotten over the fence and left. Clicking off my light, I turned around to leave. But then I heard this heavy breathing coming from the far side of the yard. Without turning my light back on, I tried to walk over there silently. 5 steps in and the bushes exploded in action. I should probably explain how the yard was laid out. It was a big rectangle, maybe 50 by 20 feet, fenced in with bushes lining the inside. There was a bird bath and patio furniture in the middle, a grill off to one side, and kids' toys in the back corner. So the bushes all started to shake like something was running through them. I still didn't see anything yet, only the movement. I fumbled with my flashlight to turn it on and draw my weapon at the same time. In that split second as I looked down to find the switch with my thumb, something burst up like a spring. It happened so fast I didn't get a good look. All I caught was they didn't clear the fence in one leap, but they used their arms and vaulted over it. I've never seen a person move like that. Finally, I switched on my light. I radioed that I was in pursuit of an unknown suspect and went out and around to the field and back. By the time I got there, the perp wasn't in sight. Assuming they were hiding in the dead weeds, I went out to find them. The field is wide open. There was nowhere they could have gone I wouldn't see unless they were hiding. Once I got past the fence, I noticed a foul odor. Initially, I thought there must have been a dead animal back there, but something about the smell didn't sit right. Not really paying it too much attention, I continued. Even though I called it in, I knew backup wouldn't show for a while with how spread out we were in the county. I was on my own. Methodically, I searched the field, swinging my light left and right, weapon still drawn. 10 minutes passed. Nothing. The smell would come and go depending on the wind. Finally, I saw the same kind of prints I had seen at some of the farms. Fearing there might be a wolf nearby, I stopped and followed their direction with my flashlight. About 75 feet from me, something golden reflected back. I swept over it at first, then went back to it. In some tall weeds and dead brush, I could just make out a figure. The reflection was rising and falling like something was breathing. After squinting at it for a second, it dawned on me it was an eye. I yelled out I was a deputy, and they needed to come out with their hands up. There was no response. I notified them one more time. Still no answer. Then I approached the subject with my gun trained on them. I hadn't even taken 2 steps when this thing stood up. It was at the edge of my light, so shadows were hard, but I swear it had fur. It looked like a man in its shape, but there was a muzzle. It was also very tall. That's the best description I got because it took off. This thing was fast. It started on 2 legs, and after a few strides dropped down to all 4s. It was gone before I could even start chasing. I was gobsmacked. My arms went limp, and I stood there with my mouth open for probably 5 minutes. I had seen a lot in my time on the force, but I had never seen anything like that before. Another deputy pulled up as I was just coming out of the field. He asked me what it had been, and I told him it must have been a wolf. I showed him the tracks to confirm my story. I don't know if he believed it, but there was nothing else he could say. We got a handful more calls about a prowler, and I would tell people to stay inside if they saw something and call us again. By May, the call stopped completely, and we never got another one while I was there for 3 more years. Not until recently did I try to figure out what I had seen. Could be now that I'm retired I have more free time to look into it. Although when I was working I didn't want to know. It might have put the fear in me, and that wouldn't have been good. After looking into it a bit, the closest thing I can find is what people call a dogman. Bigfoot doesn't really add up to me, but I don't know. I've just started looking into it, so if anyone with more knowledge can confirm what it was, I'd like to know. For the last few weeks, I've been seeing a lone coyote walking around my property every morning. That's nothing to be alarmed about usually, but there have been other strange things going on to support what I'm about to mention. First though, let me lay out where I live. I live on this really small town on the edge of Arizona and New Mexico. There are about 2,400 people here, as long as Mrs. Sanchez hasn't passed away while I'm writing this. Houses are spread out. I live near the edge of town and my closest neighbor is half a mile away. There isn't much here except a post office, gas station, hardware and feed store, and one fast food place. We drive 40 minutes to the next town over to get our groceries and whatnot. Only reason I moved here was that I inherited the house from my uncle when he passed away. Luckily I'm an artist and can live anywhere I like, as long as UPS will stop by to pick up my work. I've been in town for 10 years now, and know everyone pretty well. Outgoing has always been my style. I'm a real people person. Back to that coyote. I started noticing it probably a month ago. I get up at 6 every morning, have a cup of coffee while I watch the sunrise, and take a walk down the dirt road that runs by my house by, I'd say, around 7. I've seen packs of them before, running out of the ditch and into the scrub forest as the sun is coming up. I figure they're done hunting for the night and going somewhere to sleep. It's been that way since I moved here, but lately the pack is gone, and only a single coyote comes around now. Around the time I noticed the one coyote, I also started to hear things at night. Weird drums off in the distance. They had a specific beat to them that never changed. I asked around town and no one knew what I was talking about. It didn't bother me, but I found it odd. Still, I left it alone. I wasn't about to go out into the dark looking for the person having a good time and not hurting anybody. The drums went on for 3 or 4 days, then stopped. Figured whoever it was had moved on. 2 nights after the drums had stopped is when I heard something else. There was a voice. I couldn't place it, but it seemed familiar. I was outside watching the sunset and sipping a beer when I heard a voice from the scrubs on the far side of my yard. It wasn't clear at first. I thought I had imagined it. But then it got a little louder. I couldn't make out what it was saying. Looking around, I saw no one out there. It stopped after a while, and I thought maybe someone was walking through the woods, and the wind had carried the sound over. I went back inside, and nothing else happened for a couple of days. When something did happen again, it turned the dial to 11. I was in bed, close to falling asleep, when I heard a knock on my window. The sound of the knock jolted through me, since I wasn't expecting it. It wasn't a single tap like a bug or a bird hit the glass. It was 4 or 5 knocks that I couldn't ignore. I laid in bed thinking of what it could have been. Things like a burglar, a crazy person, or some transient all flew through my mind. Then it happened again, and a voice said hello. The voice was weak and raspy, barely above a whisper. It sounded so dry and hoarse that the first thought that came to my mind was someone had been lost in the desert, and I was the first house they found. But then I thought, why didn't they come to the front door? Getting up as quietly as I could, I crawled to the window, so my silhouette wouldn't be against the blinds. Then, very carefully, I pulled a corner of the curtain back to look out. No one was there. I let out a sigh of relief, but started questioning if I was going crazy. This went on for 2 more nights, and I wasn't sleeping well. Every time after this happened, when I saw that lone coyote while out on my morning walk, I would swear it was smiling at me. That stupid thing would come out of the ravine with a bounce in its step, then stop and look at me for a second, like it was pleased with itself, before running off into the scrub. It all stopped for about a week. I just started settling back in, thinking it was over. But then it happened again. This time it was a little earlier, somewhere around 8. I was in the bathroom brushing my teeth when the knock happened. By now I was fed up with all of this. There's a bat I keep in my closet for security. I went to grab it. The plan was to go out and catch whoever was doing this, and just give them a good scare. After I grabbed it, I froze in my tracks. The usual dry, raspy voice that said hello was different. Now, when they said hello, it sounded exactly like my dead uncle. Logically, I knew that was impossible. He had been dead for 10 years. But here was someone that sounded just like him. They even had that little chuckle he'd do after every sentence. There was a dull thud as the bat slipped from my limp fingers. A part of me wanted to tear the blinds open and see my uncle, but I also knew that whatever was out there wasn't him. Instead, I went to the glass sliding door in the next room. If you press your face against it, you can see clear to the corner of the house where my bedroom's at. Once I got there, I looked out. The only thing that was there was a coyote standing under my bedroom window. Now, I'm not the smartest man, but I know a coyote doesn't talk. It especially doesn't sound like your dead uncle. I couldn't make heads or tails of what this might have meant. All I knew was it wasn't good. Quickly, I closed all the blinds in the house, grabbed my bat, and sat on my couch all night. The morning after, I still went out for my walk. And when I saw the coyote, I said out loud, "I know it's you." The bounce instantly came out of its step, and it scampered off this time. That was a week ago. Haven't seen the coyote since then either. This sounds crazy, but we live in a crazy world. I'm not a gun guy, but I've been thinking pretty hard about picking one up. The kind you hunt coyotes with. I live in a rural community about 30 minutes outside the city. It's all spread out houses with big yards, and some neighbors even have horses. It's quiet out here, which is why what's been happening has got me so on edge. The first time I saw it was about 2 weeks ago. I was out walking with my daughter, she's 9, after dinner, maybe around 7:30 or so. It was that time of day where it's not quite dark yet, but the sun's gone down and everything has that gray-blue tint to it. We were 2 streets over from our house, where the last row of houses backs up to open fields. That's when I saw it. At first I thought someone's Great Dane had gotten loose. There was this huge black dog standing out in the field behind the houses, maybe 50 yards away. But then it moved closer to a tree and I realized it was way bigger than I'd thought. I'm talking shoulder height had to be at least 4 feet, maybe more. It was just standing there, not moving, looking in our direction. We kept walking and a tall hedge blocked our view for a second. When we came out on the other side, and I looked back at the field, it was gone. I tried to tell myself I just didn't get a good look at it in the dim light, that maybe it had been closer to the tree line than I thought and just walked into the woods. But then my daughter asked me, "Mom, what was that really big dog?" So I know I didn't imagine it. I was a little freaked out, but I convinced myself it was just someone's pet that got loose. Some people out here have livestock guard dogs, those big breeds that are supposed to protect sheep and goats. Maybe that's all it was. Then a few days ago, something happened that I can't explain away so easily. I work as a nurse and I've been covering someone else's shift, so I'd been at the hospital for 12 hours straight. It was around 11 p.m., and I was driving home on the 2-lane road that leads back. No streetlights out here, just your headlights and whatever the moon gives you. I was exhausted. I remember my eyes getting heavy and my head starting to nod forward. Then this massive dog came out of nowhere and jumped right in front of my car. I slammed on the brakes and swerved hard to the right. I think I left indents on my steering wheel from gripping it so tight. When I finally got the car under control and looked around, the dog was gone. Once the adrenaline wore off, it dawned on me. When I swerved, I'd been drifting into the oncoming lane. I hadn't even realized it. If that dog hadn't appeared and startled me awake, I could have hit another car head on. I'm pretty sure it was the same black dog from before. You don't forget what a huge black dog looks like, and you don't see them often, if at all. After that, I started wondering if I was dealing with something supernatural. I've heard stories about black dogs being omens or guardians or whatever. It would be nice to believe that, especially since it might have saved my life. But what happened 3 nights ago made me think this thing is very, very real. I haven't been sleeping well lately. Work stress and too much on my mind. Around midnight, I decided to go for a walk to clear my head. I know it's not the smartest thing to do alone at night, but I've lived here for 6 years and never had a problem. It's usually just me and the crickets. I was a few blocks from home when I got this feeling. The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I looked around and that's when I saw them. These 2 blood-red ovals hovering in a yard to my left, maybe 30 feet away. They were floating there in the darkness between two houses. I stopped walking and took a closer look. They seemed to be reflectors or lights on something, but they were too high off the ground and they were glowing. I stared at them, trying to figure out what I was looking at. I didn't have much choice but to keep walking toward home. As I moved, the red ovals moved too. They were following me, staying alongside me but keeping that same 30-foot distance. I picked up my pace a little but wasn't scared enough to run. Then I got to the Hendersons' place. They have a barn in their backyard with motion sensor floodlights. When I passed by their place, the lights kicked on. I finally saw what was following me. It was the dog. Those red ovals were its eyes. They were glowing, and I could see the full shape of it now, bigger than any dog I've ever seen, easily the size of a small horse. Its coat was completely black, like it absorbed the light around it. My mouth went dry. I realized that it had been following me the whole time, staying in the dark where I couldn't see it. I don't know for how long. I had 2 blocks left to get home. I kept walking, not looking directly at it, but keeping it in my peripheral vision. It followed me the whole way, even jumping fences when it needed to. When I got to my driveway, I walked up to the front door, unlocked it as calmly as I could, and went inside. I looked out the window and saw those red eyes watching from the street for a moment before they disappeared. I don't know what to make of this. I've heard the folklore about black dogs being bad omens, harbingers of death, that kind of thing. But this one might have saved my life when I was falling asleep at the wheel. It hasn't tried to hurt me, but it's also been following me and watching me, and I have no idea what it wants or what it might do. Has anyone else experienced anything like this? Any advice would be appreciated. I'm a security guard in Scotland, working nights at an industrial estate outside Falkirk. The pay is decent enough that I've been able to save for a flat with my girlfriend. But after what happened on Tuesday morning, I'm seriously reconsidering whether any amount of money is worth this. The estate itself is pretty standard, a cluster of warehouses and light industrial buildings, most of them empty or barely used. My job is to do rounds every 2 hours, check the perimeter fencing, and make sure no one's tried to force the roller doors. The previous guard, Colin, handed over to me back in October. During the handover, he mentioned I might see things moving around at night, especially near the eastern boundary where the property backs onto some overgrown scrubland and a disused railway cutting. He said just to keep to my route and not approach anything unusual. I thought he meant wild animals. The weird stuff started around 3 weeks ago. I was doing my usual check of the eastern perimeter when I noticed movement along the fence line out of the corner of my eye. When I turned my torch toward it, I caught a glimpse of something pale moving low through the overgrowth, but it was gone before I could focus on it properly. Could have been a deer, I told myself. Since then, I've seen similar things maybe 4 or 5 times, always the same area, between 2 and 4 a.m. Quick flashes of something pale in the darkness, barely at the edge of my torchlight. A few times I've heard movement in the scrubs, branches snapping, something moving through the undergrowth. But when I shine my light over, there's nothing there, only swaying bushes. Those events were this or that, nothing to be worried about. But what happened next put me on edge. I kept finding sections of the chain link fence pushed outward, bulging like something had been testing its strength. There'd be marks in the mud near the fence that I couldn't quite make sense of, drag marks and impressions that were spaced oddly too far apart, and twice I found what looked like scratch marks on the metal posts, up high at least 7 or 8 feet off the ground. Tuesday night, technically Wednesday morning around 2:30, is when things escalated. I was walking along the eastern perimeter with my torch when I caught movement ahead of me. maybe 70 meters out. I stopped and aimed my torch at the hedgerow that runs along the boundary. For just a second or two, I saw something behind the hedge. The hedge is waist high on me, and I'm a pinch over 6 feet. Whatever was behind it was taller. I could see what looked like a pale, elongated shape rising above the hedgerow. Then it dropped down fast and I lost sight of it. My heart skipped a beat. I stood there for a moment trying to convince myself it was a deer standing on its hind legs, or something equally ridiculous. Then I saw movement again, closer this time, maybe 40 meters away. Something pale moving through the overgrowth on all fours. I only caught glimpses of it between the bushes and trees. It had long limbs, and something about the joints looked funny. The way it moved was too jerky. I started backing up toward Unit 9, keeping my torch aimed in that direction. I caught one more glimpse, a quick flash really, of something pale weaving between the trees. Then the movement stopped. I got inside Unit 9 and locked the door, then went to the window facing the boundary. I couldn't see anything at first. Then the hedgerow started moving, violently shaking like something was pushing through it. I watched the disturbance move along the fence line toward the building, getting closer. Whatever was causing it, I couldn't see it clearly. Only the bushes and low branches moving, with something pale flickering in and out of view. When I got to about 20 meters from the building, it triggered the motion sensor light on the corner of Unit 9. The sudden flood of light made me blink, and when I looked again, the movement had stopped. The bushes were still, but I could see the fence there was pushed outward in a new spot. The metal links stretched. I stayed in that unit until sunrise. Didn't see or hear anything else, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was out there in the dark, just beyond where I could see. When the day shift arrived at 6, I made an excuse about feeling unwell and left early. I've spent the last 2 days reading everything I can find online. The closest thing I found is something called a crawler. Most reports are from the US, but the descriptions match what little I saw. Tall when upright, moves on all fours, pale, and avoids direct light. I'm scheduled for another shift tonight, and I don't know if I can go back. Sarah thinks I'm being ridiculous, that it was only a deer and my mind made up the rest. Maybe she's right, but I keep thinking about how high those scratch marks were on the fence posts, and the way the bushes moved. Has anyone else experienced something like this in the UK? Is there anything I can do to protect myself? Any advice would be greatly appreciated, because right now, I'm running out of options. I'm a shepherd in mid-Wales, and I don't know if I'm being daft or if there's actually something dangerous on my land. About 2 months back, I lost 3 sheep. I know sheep, and sheep don't just vanish without a trace. They're thick as mints, but they stick together, and they stay within their patch. When you do lose one, there's always signs. Wool caught on wire, tracks leading to a gully, a body if they've fallen and broken their neck, something like that. I got a couple of mates around to help me search on the quads. Spent most of a day combing the hillsides. We found nothing. No wool, no tracks, and no blood. It's like they were plucked off the earth. I tried to brush it off at first, but it kept nagging at me. Since then, the flock's been acting odd. Around dusk especially, they get proper skittish. They bunch up tight and won't spread out to graze like they normally do. I've worked with sheep long enough to know when they're just being sheep, and when something's actually wrong. 2 weeks ago, I found scat near one of the rocky outcrops on the western edge of my land. A big pile of it. I've seen fox droppings, badger, even dog mess from the occasional walker's pet. This was larger than anything I'd expect from any animal around these parts. For a second, I thought it might be human, but the look of it wasn't right. I'm not going to go into detail because frankly it's grim, and I'm trying not to dwell on it. The next day, I heard sharp panic bleeding coming from behind that same outcrop. I legged it over, and what I found made my stomach turn. One of my ewes was torn apart. I mean absolutely shredded. There was blood everywhere, wool scattered across the rocks. Whatever did it had been feeding. I've seen what foxes do to lambs, and I've seen what dogs do when they get into a flock. This was much worse. My dogs. I've got 2 border collies who live for working the sheep. They're alert, always responding when there's a threat. That day, though, they were huddled together about 20 meters away from the outcrop. Wouldn't come near it even when I called. That's not like them at all. It made me think back to the day the other sheep went missing. I remembered my dogs had been pressed up against me for about an hour that morning, completely ignoring the flock. At the time, I thought they were just being clingy, but now I'm wondering if they sensed something I didn't. Last night confirmed it for me. I was bringing the flock back to the pen before dark, and I got this feeling that I was being watched. At first I brushed it off. These hills can feel eerie when you're on your own, but the feeling got stronger. I started looking around, thinking maybe one of my mates was coming by for a visit. I didn't see a person. What I saw was a massive black cat standing on top of one of the outcrops about 40 meters away. I'm talking huge, bigger than any dog I've ever seen. It was standing there, completely still, staring in my direction. I blinked hard, rubbed my eyes because I thought I must have been seeing things. When I looked again, it was gone. I've heard the stories. Everyone around here has. Big cat sightings, usually chalked up to people seeing things after a few pints down the pub. Escaped exotic pets from decades ago, supposedly breeding in the hills. I always thought it was bullocks, pub talk and nothing more. Now I'm not so sure. I'm planning to start tending the sheep from the quad. They hate the noise and it'll stress them out. But at least I can cover ground faster and keep a closer eye on them. The problem is I haven't got a clue what I'd actually do if I came face to face with whatever that was. I'm not exactly equipped to fight off a cat that size. I haven't told anyone locally about this yet, because I don't want to sound like I've lost the plot. I'm genuinely concerned for my flock, and honestly a bit concerned for myself as well. I'm starting to feel proper unease going out there alone.
You have been watching Neon Noir, a Radeon production brought to you by Spoopy Cola.